Hey guys, Darren Kelly, here, coach of Wide Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of our round preview series. On today's episode, we will be looking ahead at round 18, where we have seen a lot of recent news coming out of relevant injuries, suspensions, all the sorts. So we're going to dive deep into that today. So wanted to start off the top, straight off the bat, what we do around here, and discuss the recent suspensions and injuries. So obviously, we know that Max Gorn has been confirmed he's going to be out for the next 2 to 3 weeks now. That was in the injury report here. That is said, yeah, 2 to 3 weeks for that ankle injury. Said apparently he chipped his base of his right fibula. So that does not sound fun at all, but yeah, he will be out for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I think it's an automatic trade, especially given how we have no cover at this point in time. I know some people may have like Kruger, I think his name is, but I don't think that's you're probably costing you 50 odd points there, right? Because I think he's probably only gets like 60s or so, 70 at most. Yeah, so I think that's too much points to be wasting. I think it's automatic trade. You're not holding that at all unless there's only a little bit of a world where I'd consider holding him. If there's an increment that it could only be a 1 weeker. I do think 1 week off for Max Gorn could be really good for him, and we can see him be the highest averaging player for the like we have seen for the start of the season, be for the remainder of the season. So he could be really good player there, but it would be very much against the grain. So I definitely think he is one that needs to be traded out. So we will get into my Ruck's ratings. Obviously, it's a huge talking point this week. There's going to be a lot of division about what people are doing and looking at the trade-ins. There is a lot of division what's going on, so it's good. It's going to separate the competition and it's going to make some good viewing, I reckon. The other important one is, as of recording, Heaney is still banned with his 1 week suspension there with that hit on on Webster there. They are appealing it, so that will be happening tonight. Apparently, sometime in the evening. Don't have a confirmed time just yet, but it'll be interesting to see because I doubt we'll actually know prior to teams being announced tonight at 5:30 or whatever it is. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see. We'll have to wait and probably till tomorrow, Friday, to actually confirm that he's playing. There, I want to talk about this one a little bit more in depth than what I did in my previous video, just given I've thought about it a little bit more, and there's a lot of things to consider with Sydney and what's happening at Sydney. So while I think his role should be saving houses, but there's no confirming that with the likes of you've got Callum Mills that is pretty much ready to come off from his injury, so he should be ready for a return. It's not confirmed that he's returning. He could go through their second side and just get a bit of match fitness in him, but considering it was a shoulder injury, I don't think his fitness should be that bad, so he might be willing to just come straight back into the senior side. At the end of the day, I believe he's the captain of that side, so he could definitely come back in. And they also have Luke Parker that is available as well, who has predominantly played a lot of midfield. So it'll be interesting to see what dynamic they sort of run in this week. Maybe they do more 50-50 roles, so that could really mean some bad scoring for Heaney for the remainder of the season. So if you're banking on that he's not going to be that sort of 60 to 70%, which he has been for majority of the season, then it could be a really decent play just to jump off him and be really aggressive. There's no guarantee that's going to happen though. So I am still in the situation that I'm looking to hold, even if he does probably miss the 1 week. I do think Sexton's probably a little bit more of an issue this week. So, but I'm still tossing up and turning with that. What is probably the best thing to do. So hopefully he gets off and he's just sort of a watch and see, and we can assess next week. But at the time of recording, he's still off for that 1 week, so still gonna make a decision there. So the other one was Isaac Rankin failed his tribunal visit and he is off for the next 4 weeks. I don't think they're appealing it, not going to the appealing board, so I think he's just taken that 4 weeks on the chin. So he is a massive trade out for my. No, it's not my team, but he is a massive trader if you have him. So you can't be holding that much money on your bench for that long. So a lot going on this week. We'll see what team stories up in terms of some carnage, but hopefully we're all good to go. So I guess to dive a little bit deeper into those sort of mainstream media this week, we want to discuss the ruck. So if you didn't see my latest video, the review series, I actually dived quite deep into what Ruck will be the best option for the remainder of the year. We went through, 7 or 8 good options there that I'd be highly considering. Um, and probably what I want to do now is just sort of rank them and sort of talk about them a little bit. So when we go through the most traded in players, we don't have to talk about them as much. So Rucks, obviously Max Gorn's out, 2 to 3 weeks, massive trade out. Who are we going to? So there are a lot of good options. Like I said, there's probably 7 or 8 good options that you're looking at. Let me just list them here. You've got English. He's probably is the number one rated traded in player at this current time. So everyone's sort of rating him. You got Marshall, Grundy, and then you got Cherry, who are sort of the four main rucks I'll consider. They're highly owned. They've been going really well so far this season. Obviously, very popular. So, and then you've got sort of these lesser knowns or less popular players, and you've got Nank, you've got Tom de Koning, you've got Luke Jackson with no Sean Darcy, and then you've got a Lloyd Meek if you're brave enough there. So, a lot of great options to consider. So let's just start going down the list. So English, I really like him as an option. He's number 3 on my list. I don't rate him as highly as what I think everyone else is. As obviously being an owner for, I don't know, I think I owned him since I think round 9 or something like that, where he's been quite poor. He has shown glimpses of the Tom English of old, especially the last 3 weeks where he's gone 124, 96, and 131. Obviously, 2 of those were really easy matchups in Fremantle and Port Adelaide, but he did have a 96, which is pretty decent against a tougher ruckman in Cherry. So he is starting to find some form, so I don't mind him there. He is a little bit more, a little bit cheaper than the rest, being only 911k, break even of 94 as well. Also has a pretty decent run from what I see. So we'll have a quick look at his run here. He goes wrong one. Carlton this week, so that's one of the easiest matchups. I think they're plus, let's have a quick look here. For Ruckman, they are plus 11 points. So really tight at the top there. So here's the 3rd easiest matchup against De Koning. The only flag I'll say with that is that I highly expect Pitnet to come back in this week, and Pitnet is a much harder ruckman to score against. So that would be the only flag. If Pitnet is in, I'd probably look elsewhere than go to Tim English. I think it's a pretty tough run there. But besides that, then he has Geelong. Pretty easy matchup there against whoever wants to ruck, whether it's a Blitzarves or it's a Stanley, even a Sam de Koning if he's playing. But then he goes on to play Sydney, Melbourne, who are both pretty tough. I expect Maxi Gawn to be back by that round 21, so that should be a bit harder there. So overall it's not a bad run, but it's probably not the best of the lot. So that's why I have him rated down there a little bit, just with him not being the top rated player than what I sort of expected. Sorry. Pardon me. So I really like him as an option, but I still think there are better ruckmen out there. So I'll move down the list again to the next ruckman. Rowan Marshall is one that I, again, don't highly rate. He has been, had four games in a row over 100. But obviously there is that major concern that Tom Campbell's looming in and out of the side. Was in the side for 2 games, which, again, Marshall still scored well, but it did hurt his hit-outs a lot. He relied heavily on, goals or taking marks in the forward line. So he is one I'm not super confident on as well, even though it would seem like, if you're just looking at it from a blank page, Marshall is the easiest next option, just given it's always been sort of a Max Gawn and Marshall sort of 1 and 2 ruckman for the year. So, but looking at his run real quick, it is pretty tough. So he probably has one of the worst runs of the ruckman. So he goes Adelaide this week, which is an easy matchup. O'Brien should be pretty easy to score against. But then he goes on a bad run of 4 hard games there against West Coast, Essendon, Brisbane, and Richmond. So really tough matchups there. I don't think you're going to see the stealing scores that we sort of were looking for that period of time. So I've got him down the list at number 4 there. I just don't think... while I think he should be pretty consistent, I just don't think you're going to get those ceiling scores that you're looking for and provide a captain option as well. So there's him. Moving down the list again, Tom DeConing is another one that a lot of people trading in. He is well down my list. Like I said, I think Pitnet is highly likely to join back in this week, just given um, DeConing got a little bit messed around there with Briggs last week, and they need a bit more of a bigger body in there. So I'd expect him to come in. So he's down on my list at number 6 there. He was also listed as a test this week in the injury report, so he's obviously carrying some sort of injury. Where is he at? I think it was actually a knee knock, but they've listed it as an ankle for some reason. So that's probably just enough flag to say I'm not touching that. I don't know if he's going to be in or out. So that's already 2 reasons why I just couldn't do it, even though he is at a much cheaper price at 124k, break even of 61. His run is pretty decent as well. Got English this week, but then has Cherry, then has Port Adelaide, Collingwood, and Hawthorn. So overall, he probably has the third best run, or second best run, I'll say, second best run for the remainder of the season for Ruck. So it would take a brave coach to do it with those flags, with Pitnet and the injury. But at the end of the day, he does have a ceiling and does have a good run coming up. So I don't mind it there. And someone you need to highly consider. Moving down the list, got Luke Jackson's next. Jackson's one I hugely probably don't rate. It's a very short term play in my eyes, that because what's his name? Sean Darcy is only out for the 1 week, I believe. Yeah, he's out with concussion for 1 week. So there's every chance he's back next week. And then you see these stinky scores from Luke Jackson where he scored a 39. And a couple of 60s here and there, even 70s. So it's just one that I don't think it's going to prove to be a long term play, even though the next 2 matches are really nice, where they play Port, I believe. No, they play Hawthorn. So that's a really good one against Lloyd Meek. He gives it plenty of points. And then he comes against a ruckless Melbourne, who should be a Fullerton or something like that. So that should provide plenty of points. But I just don't see the long term look on that. Unless you plan to go, 2 week play of Luke Jackson, and then you want to either shuffle him in the forward line and then pick up another ruck from there at that point on. Maybe you're focusing on picking up Max Gawn after his injury, or you move on to a different ruck that has a better run from that point on. That's the only way I would look at it. But my personal preference is always to look for that long term option. So I'm personally just looking for a ruckman that can service me until the end of the year and be, provide plenty of points and hopefully get the maximum amount of points out of that line for the remainder of the season. Hopefully you guys can hear me. It seems like it's pretty quiet. Is that right? Yeah, no, it should be fine. Don't know what's quiet going on there. We'll continue on. If it goes wrong, goes wrong. Sorry for the Spotify listeners if it is a bit quiet. Yeah, so Doug Jackson, I only like it in that circumstance where you may be looking to shift him on after a couple of weeks, but yeah, I'm personally looking at long-term options there. Cherry is the next one we need to discuss, and he is actually my number 1 this week in terms of, a ruck trade in, because his floor has been amazing all year. He's only dropped 1 score that's, very stinky at 57. That's against a hard matchup in Wits where he just wasn't really getting around the ball. 5 free kicks against. Couldn't really get as many tackles as he used to. So yeah, just one of those games. But besides that, he's been pretty much a solid sort of 90 to 110 sort of guy for most seasons. Doesn't have probably this high ceiling of, some other ruckmen. So he scored plenty of times over 120. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times over 120, but nothing over 130. So just needs to find that next step to get to, 140s, 150s. But he's only dropped below that 90 mark a couple times. So he's got a really high floor, loves the tackle, has a pretty good, decent run coming up. Not the best. Obviously got Sydney this week, who's a tough matchup against Grundy. But then he goes Carlton and Geelong. 2 easy matchups, should find it pretty easy there. Richmond and West Coast are a bit tougher there in the next 2. But then finishes off with English and Lloyd Meek. So bit up and down there, but he should be pretty consistent throughout the remainder of the season. So, and his by far the most informed ruckman of the competition, averaging 116 over the last 5 and 115 over the last 3. So, yeah, I really like him as an option. It is a bit more expensive at 953k there, break even of 104, but I think he'll service you fairly well for the remainder of the season. He's been a great pick all year. So he is my number one. Toby Nankervis is the interesting one that I highly like in this sort of position. Is like, I want to be a bit unique. He's only 3% owned. He's shown a high ceiling. He's gone, 141, 150, 130, throughout this season. And he has the best run overall for the remainder of the season. So looking at that, his average for the remainder of the season is rated at 5, so that's meaning it's really good. He comes up against GWS this week, so Briggsy has been a really good matchup. Port Adelaide next week, either easiest matchup in the competition, then Collingwood as well there, before coming up against Cherry, who is a slightly harder matchup, goes into Marshall and Lloyd Meek before finishing off with Wits, which you probably could look to trade him out then in anyway. But I think he's a really good ruckman, and I think his last couple of weeks have shown that he's back in form. Looking at his last sort of 6 weeks or so, he's gone 100, 141, 118, 96, 107, 150. So only dropped below the 100 there once, and that was against Hawthorn, which would have been a bit of an easier matchup. Maybe just didn't really suit him. Only had the 11 disposals, so not really sure what happened there. But I really like him as an option. Like I said, good run. Price is a bit higher, 942k. So you're not really saving the coin there as much as you'd expect. But he's shown the ceiling that we're sort of looking for, and could provide a pretty good captain option. Very unique. And I highly like him, and I'm targeting this week. But here's my number 2 on the list. So far we had Cherry number 1, Nank number 2, English 3, Marshall 4. And then we had De Koning at number 6 and Jackson at number 7 there. Keep going down the list and find the next ruckman. So next up would be, if I could find him, not talking Ned Moyle, we're not trading him in. Briggsy is one I haven't really considered. I don't think he's probably shown the consistency or the ceiling that we're sort of looking for. He's only gone over 120 twice this season. And yeah, he's only averaging the 90. So I think that's too many points to off the top leaders that is going to hurt you, so I'm not looking at him. Brody Grundy is probably another one we need to consider. His form, over the last sort of month or two have been pretty good. Has dropped off in the last 2 a little bit, unfortunately, with an 84 and a 95. So, and they were against good matchups as well, against a Dockers and a St Kilda. So Rowan Marshall and Luke Jackson there. So they should have been really good matchups for him. The other thing to consider with Brody Grundy is that he plays a lot of games at the SCG for the remainder of the season, where we have seen him have quite a big ceiling. Like, I think he scored this 142 there, 134 there as well. So he loves playing at the SCG. And yeah, he's one that you could consider. Has probably a bit of a tougher matchup in terms of run. So he goes, the next 2 are pretty tough. So you got Cherry, and then he's got Mac and Ernie. So both pretty hard matchups. Then he goes into English, Port, and Collingwood. So 3 good matchups. Essendon against Goldstein is pretty tough, and then finished off with Adelaide. So not the best matchups in runner fixture. So he's probably a bit down my list at number 5 there. Again, more expensive. I think you probably just go with a English over him, just with the 20k difference and the better run. And I think finally the last one we wanted to talk about in terms of ruckman is Lloyd Meek. Bit of an out there one for, the brave out there. He has shown quite a good, consistent role. Obviously, he's the number 1 ruck there at Hawthorn for now. And he's shown he can be sort of that 90 to 100 guy for the remainder of the season. Has a pretty good run, as I'll show you here. He probably has the 3rd best run for the remainder of the season. 5 really good games stretch here. So he goes Fremantle, Collingwood, Adelaide, GWS, and Carlton. So all of those are green matchups. Collingwood are probably the only one that's a little bit lighter there. But then he finishes off with a Richmond and a North, which you could probably trade out at that point in time because it's, yeah. So you can probably look at him for a 5 game stretch there, hoping he goes, that 100 to 110 zone, even not put if not even put up a couple ceiling scores, because he has shown he's got a ceiling of 124 so far this season. But good matchups haven't always led to his good scores, even against the likes of. Oh, never mind. I'll take that back. His two lower scores in recent times are against McInerney, who scored an 80, and Danan Curvis, who he scored a 66 against. So both are tougher matchups there. So when he does have good matchups, which we can see here, English scored 117, Marshall he scored a 124, Port Adelaide he scored a 108. Even a West Coast, he scored a 112, who have been a tougher matchup recently. And last week against the Cats, he scored a 94, who are an easy matchup as well. So he should be about that 100 to 110 guy for these next 5 games. So I highly recommend picking him up as well. He is definitely one of the cheapest options out there below 800k. So definitely could be saving a bit of coin and making that upgrade on the other side. Bit of a risky play, but I definitely think it's worthwhile. So just to go back again and rank them again, Cherry was my number 1 pick. I think he's just the safest play, highest floor, and has somewhat of a ceiling. Good run coming up, so I highly recommend him. Number 2, I had Nank, just looking for that ceiling and the good run. He has the best run for the remainder of the season and should provide you some pretty decent scores. Number 3, I had English, who has been finding a little bit of form recently, just with a couple of his matchups coming up. I think he should be pretty decent. Bit cheaper as well at 911k rather than those 950 guys. Number 4 had Roll Marshall, tougher run matchups to come, and concerns with what his role is going to be with a few of those tools out at St Kilda. So he's down there. Number 5 had Brodie Grundy. I think he's dropped off in his form a little bit recently, and his run isn't the greatest, so I have him a little bit down there. The Croning I have number 6, just given the flags of Pitnet coming back in, that injury he's been listed as, so I just couldn't do it, but he is up there a little bit higher than these other two, just given his price range. Number 7, I had Luke Jackson. He probably should be rated a little bit higher if you're only looking at it for like a short-term play, like 1 or 2 weeks. But just as a long-term play, I have to rate him a lot lower, just given Sean Darcy should be back next week. And then finally, I had Lloyd Meek down the bottom there, just with a bit of a risky play. Just hasn't probably shown enough to be ranked as a top-rated ruckman as these top boys. So, which is hard for me to say, being a Hawthorn supporter. I do love Meeky. I don't think he's got the consistency as some of those other guys. So there's the rankings. Hopefully that helps you guys in terms of who you should be trading in there. I will be trading in Nank this week, just trying to be a little bit different, I think, chasing that fixture and chasing that ceiling. So we'll see how things change out in teams. So just quickly want to touch on Heaney as well. If obviously just recapping what we're going to be doing if he is off or if he gets free. So obviously if he gets off this band, I think it's an absolute hold. I think you watch for 1 week and see what that role is going to be like with the likes of Callum Mills and Luke Parker back in the side, whether that's going to decrease his CBAs and then obviously decrease his scoring potential, and then we can reassess next week. So that's what I'd be doing. If he is off for the 1 week, then if you don't have much else that you have, going on in your team, so say you've maybe only got a Max Gorn who you got to deal with, then you could easily go a Max Gorn and a Heaney out at the same time. Be very aggressive for both, and you have enough money to do whatever you want realistically. So, I don't mind the aggressive player moving him on, just sort of jumping the gun and sort of expecting things to change at Sydney, but I sort of still expect him to be a top 4 averaging forward player for the remainder of the season. So it's a tough call, but I'd personally be holding the 1 week. So if he is off 1 week, I'm looking at holding and just using some bench cover for this week. We have a lot of good rookies in like a Thelstrup, what's his name? A Dowling as well. Some people are maybe running a Freya. You've even got a Mana that you could be trading in this week, or people may have held throughout the throughout the period. So there's plenty of good options that you could loop in between there. So that should be able to provide you probably a line of 70 or something. So if anything scores over 70, I'd be absolutely taking that. A 70 in the forward line is nothing to sneeze at. I'd absolutely take that. So yeah, that's what I'd be doing in all those situations. With a Rankin, I think it's just an automatic trade out. I don't think he can hold that, so he needs to go. And I think there's plenty of good options in the forward line that need to be considered. So I think Dylan Moore is probably the easiest one to go to. He's priced at 824k, 25k. I think a Rankin was about that 773, so it's not costing you a whole lot. 50k, I think most people will be able to find that with the downgrade from Max. So I think that should be pretty straightforward there, and I think he should be inside the top 6 for the remainder of the season. So that's what I'd be doing with all those 3 major problems there. We'll see what gets thrown up at teams, but that's all we can really assess for right now. So, all right, with all that said and done, let's move in to the most traded in and traded out players as we do every week. So let's go through the list now. So we'll quickly go through the main trade out targets. Obviously, we've got Max Gorn there. He needs to go 21.5k of coaches trading him out. I think he was somewhat 90% of the top 10,000 coaches owned him. So yeah, pretty much everyone has him at this point in time. So it's a massive concern and a massive dilemma that's in this time of year. So a lot of people will be trading him out. Sexton is another one that a lot of people are trading out, number 2 there at 8,300 coaches. So he is one that highly needs to be moved on. The role is still okay, but his scoring output has definitely dropped since Flanders has moved away from that back line. And I have a sneaky suspicion that he may be dropped this week, just given they lost to North Melbourne. Damien Hardwick was pretty vocal in the post-press conference that they need to grow up, and I'd expect he's going to swing the axe this week, and Sexton may be on the wrong side of that. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to take a quick drink. Yeah, so I think he's going to be dropped. So he may be another forced trade at that. So I guess if that's a situation that we're looking at, he is dropped, then we've got another forced trade as such, let's talk about the top 3. So Max Gorn's absolutely needs to be traded out. We have no cover there, so he is way up there in terms of my trade out targets. Sexton, if he is dropped, I think he's highly needs to go as well. But if you've got like a Gorn, a Rankin, a Sexton, and a Heaney, I'd be moving on a Gorn, number 1, Rankin, number 2, and then I'd be moving on a Sexton, number 3, just given the higher price tag on the Rankin's head over the Sexton. And I think, yeah, you can use that money a bit more wisely. And then you look to move on Sexton next week, who won't be returning at all. So, yeah. And I think you just end up holding Heaney. I think that's just the way it needs to go. You trade up the guys that are out for longer than you do the guy that's only out for 1 week, even though his role may be changing. You're absolutely moving on the longer term guys. So I expect him to be out for this week. So yeah, big watch there on teams this week. If you have to hold him this week, I don't think it's an absolute worst play. He does play against Port Adelaide, who are a pretty tough matchup, I think. If I just quickly go here, where's Port? For designated kickouts, it's -2 points in terms of their scale. So it's a tough one because he had a tough game last week against who did they play? Against North. And again, if we look here in terms of the hardest matchups for the designated kickouts, they're a -7. So he should be better than that 55 that he did last week. Hopefully he can push a decent 70 out for those that are looking at holding him. It's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that I hold him this week. Just, I think, given that I only have Max Gorn to deal with at this point in time, I think moving on to Sexton makes sense. Or I could play that aggressive game and move off a Heaney. I'm still sort of tossing up between what I'm going to do there. But we'll wait and see on what team sort of reveals. We'll move on from Sexton now. Like I said, I think you need to trade him out if you can. People moving off Heaney, 4.1k coaches are trading him out, being aggressive. I don't mind that. Spoke about it already. Rankin needs to go. 4k coaches have traded him out. he is down to 7% owned now, so I expect that to sort of jump up a little bit more. People jumping off Freya after he was the sub last week, and now his break even's up to 52. I think it's a smart move. His cash generation's done up to 440k, so you can use that money pretty wisely. People jumping off Reveal, very similar situation. Wasn't the sub, but did put up a stinky 31 points, and now his break even's up to 64, up nearly up to 500k there. So he is definitely one you could cash out of. If you cash out both of them, you can get up to an easy 700k player. Took Miller is probably another one that we probably needed to speak about, even though he is less owned than most. He is out for 3 to 4 weeks, I believe. Where is Gold Coast? Miller, 4 to 6 weeks with that wrist injury. So yeah, he is one you absolutely need to trade out as well. So hopefully you're not in that situation where you have a Gorn, a Rankin, and a Oliver, a Miller as well. So that could be a very dire situation. You could be looking at some donuts there coming soon. So here's another one you absolutely need to trade out. People are trading out Joe Richards. Don't mind it. I would be inclined to hold this week and maybe even have a look at, looping him this week. Maybe he could provide a decent ceiling score, which we have seen in the past from him. He's hit 90s and 80s, so maybe he could provide a decent looping option this week, playing on the Friday night. So I don't mind holding him there. But if you've already got a couple of looping options like a Manor or a few others like maybe a Harvey, not a Harvey Harrison there, so you got a couple options there. I'd probably move him on. People moving off Dowling, just jumping off early, just obviously cashing out while you can. He's up to nearly 400k, so I don't mind it. He's still got plenty of money to make, so I'm inclined to hold and looping him on this week if I can, but I don't mind people moving him on there. People are still jumping off Fisher. I probably wouldn't be jumping this week if he is named back in the side. He is named as a test, so he should be good to go. I'd say all the reports are saying he's pretty confident to make it back. So I'd be holding this week and assessing what that role is going to be like and what that implementations of McKercher back in that back line is going to do to him. So yeah, absolutely hold him. I would not be trading him this week. Clayton Oliver's another one you absolutely need to trade out. He is stinky and needs to go. So, but again, we have a lot of other carnage going around at the moment. So if you have to hold him, it's not the worst situation in the world. He could put up a decent score, maybe. It hasn't really shown it. His tougher matchups seem to be scoring well, and easier ones he seems to score shit. So it's hard to say. So. Look, if you can move him off, absolutely do it. If you can't, then that's probably not a huge big deal. Will Day is another one you probably want to jump off. His last 3 weeks have been pretty below par for what the matchups have been. So, yeah, hopefully you can jump off him as well, but it's not an absolute priority. People jumping off Yuland as well. Yeah, dropped 250, so his time is up now. I think he's going backwards in coin now. So, yeah, can move off him as well. Tough matchup in Port Adelaide as well. So, yeah, jump off him. Besides that, I think that's sort of do it for the most traded out targets. I think this is getting to a fairly unique players, and people jumping off a couple of rookies, people jumping off Sarong and a Dawson, who I don't advocate for. I know both of their forms have been pretty below par, where Sarong hasn't hit a ton in the last 4 weeks, and I think Dawson's been struggling recently as well with 57, an 84 and a 60 in his last 5. So he's just copping a lot more attention and not really getting that inside mid role and being that thirsty player that we've used to seeing him. So I wouldn't recommend jumping off them, but it isn't a very aggressive play if you do have the luxury of not having too many bullets to jump off those guys and jump to another guy that may have a bit more of a consistent role, like a Dunkley, who shouldn't cop much attention at all. People jumping off Houston, I think he's another one that absolutely needs to jump off. Bonner, yeah, absolutely. But I think that'll sort of do it for the main trade out targets. Let's move on to the main trade in targets. A bit more interesting. So I'll skip over the Ruckman as I've already spoken about them. Sean Manor is being traded in by 5.8k coaches. I really like him as an option, especially as a downgrade. I don't get comfortable with his 115. I don't expect him to score that well, every week. I expect that to sort of drop down back to a 60, if not a 70 this week against the Pies. His role hasn't really changed. He took a few CBAs, but he really just relied heavily on that tackle numbers to get that score. So don't be expecting a 115 again. Honestly, I would love to see it, but I don't think it's worth just absolutely banking on he's going to be a reliable field option for a couple weeks time. So, but in terms of he's going to make a huge amount of cash, break even of negative 32. We've seen him have scoring potential in the waffle, not the waffle, sorry, in the VFL. I think he scored like a 160 and had like 6 goals, 30 disposals, something crazy like that. So definitely has scoring potential, just needs to have the right role in the side. So, but I still think he's a great option. Number 2 is McKercher. People are trading him in 667k, breaking into 22. Got a hard matchup in the Sydney Swans this week, but I still think with his role back there, he should be fine. He just takes all the kick-ins, so hopefully the Swans miss the goals a fair bit and just get behind, and that just leads him to have more kick-ins. He took 11 kick-ins last week, which is ridiculous. No one else touched the ball in that square, so that's just his role, and I expect even with Fisher back, it sort of will be his role mainly, and maybe Fisher takes maybe 1 or 2 when he's sort of not around the ball there. So something to watch, but I really like him as an option. I've spoken about him quite heavily over the last couple of weeks when we wanted to trade him in, but I ended up not doing it. So, but I still think he's a great option. Maybe we'll get into a little bit later with these cheaper options, what are the better players, because we do have a lot of cheaper options to consider, but it's just sort of gauging which one's sort of the best play to go through. Dylan Moore is my number 1 trade-in target this week. If you have the luxury, I think it's obviously an easy one for those with Rankin. I think it's just a straight swap pretty much. Even if you're being aggressive with a Heaney trade, it's just straight to a Dylan Moore. We are still looking for forwards that are going to be in our side for the remainder of the season. I think Dylan Moore fits that role pretty easily. Still fairly unique. He's now up to 10%, so he's a good option there. Provides a bit of difference. His last month of footy has been pretty decent. Hasn't dropped below 77, and he's shown a ceiling of 132, 127, 119. Just has a nice role on that sort of half flank wing, so he spreads a lot to get these high marks, and he loves to tackle as well. So, and always bobs up for a goal. So, something to consider. I really like him there. If you don't have Jared Caldwell, absolutely you could jump on him too. I think that's a no-brainer. I think he's easily sort of top 2, if not top 3, for forwards for the remainder of the season. Sorry, just going to use my foot. Yep. So I think he's an absolute one you need to jump on. Still making a bunch of coin. Is a bit more expensive, so if you can't get to a Caldwell, then you go to a Dylan Moore, who is about 100k less expensive. So I like that. People jumping on Rosie after his big 147. Absolutely jump on him. You have missed his big price range in 60k, but I still expect he should be good for extended period of time for the remainder of the season. Let's have a quick look at his run. So he goes Gold Coast this week, who are a green matchup, then Richmond next week, and then Carlton. So 3 pretty decent matchups for those 3 weeks, then has Sydney after that. So I think he's good to go. He only has 1 hard matchup for the remainder of the year, so he just looks like a smash play, and he's super cheap. So absolutely jump on that. He looks back in business. Matt Kennedy is probably one I am just fading. I can't do it. We've seen it in the past this year already, where he's gone 91, 100, and 102, and then they instantly slam it in his face. He was a sub after that, and scored a 15. So he is mixed to fix it for them. I just couldn't do it in my eyes. There is Hewitt that's looming in the 2. So if, say, Kennedy has a bad game, Hewitt just comes straight in for him, and then they could even look to manage Kennedy a little bit as well. So I couldn't do it. I think there's a few other guys around that price range are probably a bit better in terms of consistency in that role. So, and I don't think the runs are even anything to look at. Look, he's got Western Bulldogs, North, and Port in the next 3. Really tough matchups for inside mid. So I just couldn't do it. So sorry for anyone that is looking to trade him in. I'm just a no, unfortunately. Josh Dunkley is up there as well this week, even though he's getting very pricey now, 974k. He's got a break-in in 72. He got the West Coast Eagles this week, so he is a massive captain option this week. Like I've said previously, he doesn't get tagged. Yeah, is a really friendly fantasy player. Loves to take marks and does tackle pretty hard as well. So, yeah, his last three games of footy have been pretty elite, and I expect that to continue at least for this game. And then he comes up to a bit tough matchups, but he should be fine. So here's number 3 on my list for main trading targets. People trading in Dane Zorko, again, I think that's a pretty good thing to do. He's been pretty consistent 90s to 120, 130 for most of the season, realistically. Well, he's averaging 111.3, 952k. So I think those that are jumping off a Rankin or a Heaney, they're just going straight to those that don't have, a Zorko already. So I like that. Lawson is another great rookie downgrade to go to. He's number 2 on that rookie downgrade. I think he's great there. Bit more expensive now at 924k, but break even to negative 19. Has shown some sort of decent scoring output with 77 in the 69. Yeah, he's just got a pretty solid role in there. His job security looks pretty good, so I'd say he's going to stay there. Tom Stewart is another one that I'm highly considering this week. He's obviously had that role change going into the midfield, playing that, what was it, 90 or 60, sorry, 70% CBAs, I think it was. So I highly like when he's in that midfield. So he went 83% last week and 72 this week. So I'm really considering him this week. Priced at 738k. It's just weighing up whether it's worth going down to a McKercher who is 60k cheaper, or going to a Stewart who probably has a more friendly role in terms of he's in the guts. But yeah, now thinking about it, who's going to be more thinking about tag targets coming up? Would a Stewart be tagged a bit more than a McKercher? Probably. So maybe that's what will sway my decision a little bit. So saving the coin and then saving that the tag options as well. Even though I think Stewart has a better run in terms of the remainder of the season. Let's have a quick look. Stewart goes Collingwood and then West Bulldogs and North. So tough for inside mids, those two, West Bulldogs and North. And there's no real green options in there, honestly. Whereas a designated kicker out in McKercher has, where's North here? Has Sydney and Carlton for the next 2, which are tougher matchups, but then goes into a pretty nice run of no hard matchups for the remainder of the season. So I'd probably just lean on that alone, that the price difference and the likelihood of a tag just goes to McKercher, I think. So yeah, maybe that's where I'm looking. But I still really like a Stewart as an option. He's really he's still at 20% somehow. Like, that's a lot of dead teams, but he has shown a decent ceiling of 125 so far, and yeah, I really like him as an option there. I'll do a couple more here. So Andy Wakefield is also a really good one to trade in. A bit more cheaper on the side, but negative 13 break even, 275k price tag. Has shown some sort of ceiling with, no, not ceiling, sorry, with consistent scoring with a 57 and a 71, albeit that was against a West Coast Eagles, so expect that sort of drop back to those 50s pretty quickly. So here's a bit further down the list at number 3 there for those trade-ins. Matthias Filippo is one that we need to discuss, weirdly enough. Had the massive score of 117 on the weekend after being introduced into that midfield mix at St Kilda. And I expect that role to be pretty consistent over the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks, with the likes of, what's his name, Winhager being out with that injury. Looked like he was even outside that CBA mix anyways, with Filippo coming inside. So he should have a pretty consistent role with those 60s to 70 range for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. What more can I say about it? The only flag that I have with it is that when he had, 48% CBAs, before he had his injury, it was against Fremantle. He scored a 26, so in 71 game time. At the end of the day, he is a rookie still. He's a second-year player. There's no guarantee that he's just going to break out, but obviously during his stretch in the VFL, he has been working heavily on his midfield craft, and he does have the midfield numbers in the juniors, so there's every chance that he could be, a 90 guy for the remainder of the season. But I'm just not super confident. I'd probably want to see it for one more week. He is very cheaply priced at 408k, so even if we jump on him next week, he's still probably going to be like 460, 470k. So definitely one we could look at there then, and could be even an extra option on the bench that you could be looping that has shown a ceiling, whereas we're rather than looping rookies as such. So I don't mind that. Probably just want to wait one more week. But if you're really desperate and you need to find that low price guy, I don't mind going to him. I'll probably finish it off there. I think obviously people are trading in a Merit, Lockie Neal. Don't mind those. Zach Butter. People jumping on Simkin again after last week. Probably not the week to do it, given they come up against Sydney. But again, I think he'll be good for the remainder of the season with a good run. Andy Brayshaw is another one that a lot of people should be jumping on, I think. He is a massive captain option this week. He loves playing against the Hawks, so I expect another big score at Utah's there. So he is another one I'd highly consider. Surprisingly, this other guy that I have on my list isn't in this list, but that's alright. So that'll be it for the main trade in trade out targets. Let's quickly recap everything that we've spoken about. Let me just quickly go back. Alright. So we'll quickly go through again rankings of rucks. So I went Cherry number 1, Nankervis number 2, English number 3, Marshall number 4, and Grody Grundy number 5. I meant to bring this up before, but I just forgot, so did it now. There it is. For downgrade options, real quick, Golden Shaw Manners number 1. I think it's obvious. He's showing the ceiling and good price. Humphreys is number 2 there with some consistent scoring and should provide some decent price cash generation. Wakefield number 3, probably just a little bit lower on terms of not fieldable option, but will provide plenty of cash generation. Jacob Blight there. If you're looking for a defender, also should have pretty good job security, just doesn't score as much. And besides that, if you're really struggling for cash, just go to any 200k debutant that will be playing this week. So there is the downgrade options. For main trade out targets, I think Maxi Gorn needs to be number 1. I think it's pretty obvious with that that line he's in. You don't have cover, so I'd absolutely be trading him out. Like I said, if there isn't a possibility of only being 1 week, then there's a possibility you hold and maybe use some cover like a Kruger for the week. But I personally wouldn't be trusting that. They've said it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks, so it's probably more than likely going to be 2 weeks. Yeah, so we're just going to see how he holds up. He seemed to be fine after the game, but then the morning after he was really, really sore. So it was still developing. We'll learn more over the next couple of weeks. So Heenan's my number 1. Isaac Rankin, hopefully I spelled that right, is my number 2. Out for 4 weeks, needs to go in the forward line. So you got plenty of decent options to go to there. Sexton, very similar. Even though he may still play this week, I still think he's a priority trade out. Number 4, Clayton Oliver and Houston. I put them both together. Probably lessly owned. So didn't really want to put them in this list, but I thought I would anyway. And then I definitely didn't spell Isaac Rankin right there because it's a Z, isn't it? That's alright. Let's play on the line. Yeah, it's Isaac, not Isaac. Yeah, it's spelled differently. Whatever. And then I put Heaney number 5 if you really want to be aggressive. If he is out for the 1 week, then I don't mind trading him out there. But we have spoken about if he does get off, then I'd absolutely be holding it and assessing for 1 more week. Alright, so that does it for the trade out targets. One more, we'll do the trade in targets and then we'll get into some captains. So, main trade in targets, Dylan Moore is my number 1 target. Just given the run, given his price range, given all the players that were jumping off, I think it's just a no-brainer to go to that next best mid, whether that's a Caldwell or a Moore. I love both options there. Number 2, I had Andy Brayshaw. So if I read out the scores that he's had against Hawthorn the last 2 weeks, last year, in 2023, he scored a 157 and a 134. Keeping in mind they were a much easier matchup last year, but I still expect him to continue his great form that he's found and is a pretty good option to go into. He is lowly priced as well, below 900k, so you're not probably going to get him for not less than 900k for the remainder of the season. So if you're looking to pick him up, then I'd absolutely look at picking him up this week. Has a good run, lowly owned at 6.5k, 6.5%. So I still recommend him highly. So he's my number 2. If you're in the luxurious position and you're looking to go up even higher and spend up, then I like Josh Dunkley. Instant reward this week should be a pretty big ceiling score. His form in the last 2 has been amazing, so hopefully he can make it a big 3 and reward those that have traded him in this week. He's at 12.9% owned. Treloar I've thrown in at number 4 as a bit more of a unique. Obviously, we've talked about his form quite heavily for the last couple of weeks since the bye, averaging 108 for the season. Plenty of disposals. Just seems to be very consistent, sort of anywhere from a 80 to a 150. So he hasn't dropped below 80 all season. Even when he was tagged against North Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, he still snuck forward and scored 84. So if he can get tagged and still score well like that, then absolutely taking that every day week. So I think he should be pretty consistent and show you some ceiling for the remainder of the season. The only sort of flag that I have with him is that Western Bulldogs do come up against 5 more possible tags for the remainder of the season out of 7 games. So you're talking a Chin Cotter from a Carlton there. Who does he go to? I think previously he went to a Dale, so maybe he's off there. I do expect an Atkins to play with him in against Geelong. I don't expect a James Jordan to run alongside him. I think James Jordan's a little bit too small for that sort of option. Shouldn't have any problems against Melbourne and Crows in these 2 games. Maybe a Sam Berry has been picking up a few tags recently, so maybe he goes with him. Probably suits the body type, so bit of worry there. Neil Bullen, possibly, but he hasn't been doing a huge lockdown role. Then he comes back into that the Phillips tag and then a Bedford tag after that. So it really weighs up who they're going to tag, though. Obviously, they have Bontempelli that they may tag as well, but I think not many people can tag Bont given the bigger body. So the next option is obviously either a Dale or a Treloar. So that's a bit of a flag there, but I still think he should be fine for the remainder of the season. And finally, for my number 5, I had Jack Steele, who hasn't been featured at all this week as a trading option. I really like him as an option. His last 2 has shown that he's back in form. That week off really served him well. He's had 2 really hard matchups against Port and Sydney, and he's gone 97 and 112 in those, showing he's got his marking game back, and he has again last week got his tackles up again. So I really like him. His role is super consistent. If I go to that, it's already on it. So he had 100% CBAs and not 85% last week. So no issue with his role. Very unlikely to cop any tags, I would have thought. He doesn't come up against another tag option. He does have Berry this week, if that's something that may come up, but not 100%. Besides that, he has Berry. Again, Berry at the Lions in round 21, and then comes up against Cats and Carlton later on in the year. So probably unlikely to cop too many tags, but he's lowly priced. His run is actually the best for the remainder of the season, like the best of all midfielders. So if we looked at it here, it's listed as an average of 3.8, which is far and beyond the best of any remainder midfielders. So you got Adelaide, West Coast, Essendon, pardon me again. Really good matchups. 2 neutral and 1 green. Then he comes up against tougher one in Brisbane, who is the only tough matchup for the remainder of the season. Then he goes into a nice stretch to finish it off with Richmond, Geelong, and then Carlton. So I'd highly recommend jumping on him. I would look to do that as I could. I think it's a good play. He's fairly unique, I guess, in the top 10,000 as well now. Still owned at 14%, but I'd say that's a lot of dead teams, unfortunately. So there's my top 5. Hopefully that helps you. If you think I've missed anyone, please let me know. I did try my best this week to try and find some good trade options, but most of the trade options this week are Ruckman, so it's pretty tough to sort of tell. All right, so that's it for the trade-ins. Let's go to, I guess now we go to the fixture and we look at the tag targets and we look at, captains coming up. So let's do that real quick. I didn't bring it up, so my apologies. So tag watch this week, just going down the list here. An Atkins could maybe go to a day cost, but that hasn't really been super, damaging for the last couple of weeks. So I'm not too concerned with that one. I still think day cost is a pretty good VC option. Moving down the list here, probably not too many concerns in this one. Neither of them probably tag. Maybe a Nash stands next to a Young. I think that body matchup probably suits pretty well. So that's the only thing I can see. Um, so next one, Sydney, James Jordan maybe goes to a Sheasel, I'd expect. I think he's the most damaging player from North, so I hardly expect him to go there. If he does go and want to play more of a forward tag, then maybe it does go to McCurch, so that's not a flag, but I highly doubt it goes to anyone but Sheasel. On the flip side, you got Phillips that probably goes to a Heaney if he plays. If not, it may go to a Golden, but I don't think he has the tank to go with a Golden. Maybe he has to go to a Warner there. So, bit of a watch on what Phillips does. Chincotta will most likely go to a Dale, I would expect, but I don't think it'll be too much of a worry. I don't think Dale's too highly owned at this point in time. On the flip side, doggies don't tag at all. Berry could go to a Steel or a Sinclair. Maybe I sort of expect it to be a bit more of a Sinclair than a Steel, just thinking it's a bit more damaging. But maybe they don't even look to tag at all. It's not a guaranteed one, but it's just a bit of flag there. On the flip side, St Kilda surprisingly don't have a tagging option anymore, given that Windhager is out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So with that hamstring injury, so that is good to see there. Dawson should get a free run at it this week. Moving on, we've got Alex Neil-Bullen could do a tagging role on a Mera or a Caldwell, but I doubt it. He hasn't really been doing that locking role, so just a flag there. On the flip side, Essendon don't tag at all. Caldwell does stand next to somebody, but you're not really worried about anyone from Melbourne at all. If you have an Oliver, I'd still recommend trading him out, but maybe a Caldwell stands next to an Oliver there, just going head to head. Suns and Port. I think a Swallow could go to a Rosie. I think that sort of suits sort of their body structures. So we've seen Swallow do roles like that previously. Hasn't been recently, but yeah, it definitely could be a bit of a flag. On the flip side, again, Drew could go to an Anderson if he starts to get off the chain. So probably not looking at either of those. Besides that, not too many more tags. We've got Bedford that could go to a Taranto, and I wouldn't expect Berry to go to anyone from West Coast Eagles. So I think everything else should be pretty clear in those last 2 games. So there's a tag watch. Pretty simple this week. I don't think there's too many flags coming. I'm sure they'll throw up some spanners in the works, and there could be some random ones that goes in there, but we'll have to wait and see. We did see that Graham did tag a Sarong last week, so maybe it goes to a Tom Green this week. Who knows? Have to wait and see. But we'll move on to captains. So we'll again go back down the list and talk about some captain options from each game. So Friday night, you've got Collingwood and Cats. All you're really looking at here is Nick Dacos, I think. I think he's the only one you can really look at. And I do think he's a really good option. He scored a 114 against the Cats last year. And looking at the scores against the Cats in the recent times, Dylan Moore scored a 119, a Jai Caldwell scored a 144, a Patrick Cripps scored a 115, and Isaac Heaney scored a 108. So I think this should be an easy sort of ton for him, considering, some of those guys are even copped a bit of a tag with the Atkins next to him. So yeah, I'd still think he'd be fine there. So I like him as a VC option. You're not really looking at anyone from the Cats. I don't think you're trusting a Holmes with his lower rankings, and I don't think you're trusting with a Stewart just yet, just with the freshness of that role, so not really focusing on him there. On to Saturday games, you got Hawthorn and Fremantle, so I don't mind. Obviously, you got lots of options here, so I think Brayshaw's the best one of those lots. So, like I said, he scored a 157 and a 134 against Hawthorn last year. His form last 3 or 4 have been really good. He's shown a ceiling of 130s, 140s. So he is in my top 5 as well. The only flag, I guess, with the matchup against Hawthorn, we haven't really seen many scores against them go big. So I think the only score that I had on the list was Taranto went 127, I believe, in the last 5. Yeah, looking at all these scores, there's really no major scores. Matty Crouch got 130, 133 back in round 12, but that's not in the last 5. So yeah, there hasn't been a huge amount of scores, but it hasn't been the most free-flowing game. So bit of a flag there, but I still think he's a great option to look into there. Where was I? Besides that, you obviously have the others. Sarong scored a 97 and a 120 against them last year, so he could have a bounce back game. The other two defenders in Clark and Ryan. Clark had a 76 and a 99, remembering that this was a different role back last year. And a Ryan had a 102 and an 87, an 86, last year. I do like them as definitely ceiling options, but just given the play style of Fremantle from the last couple of games is something to definitely be considered. They're not chipping it around as much as what they have been in the past. So we see really slow patches, like we saw Ryan only have an 8-point quarter in the third quarter last week, but then had a popped up for like a 43-point quarter in the second and the fourth. So really fluctuating. It would be nice if it was a bit more consistent and we could see those ceilings, but it is what it is. Besides that, I do really like the matchup though as a designated kickout. Hawthorn are actually one of the better matchups for designated kickouts. I think they're the fourth best team in the last 10 for that, and we've seen the likes of if I could bring it up here, won't count Stewart in that one just because he wasn't playing that designated kick out, but Liam Ryan 132, Lockie Whitfield 127, Mitch Hinge 114, you got Dan Houston 136, Bonner 129, and Wanganima 119. So there are quite a good few ceiling scores for designated kick out players there. So I am highly recommending. I do recommend going for them. Just a bit of flag there with the way Fremantle are playing. On the flip side, you're not really looking at anyone from Hawthorn. You're not captaining a Dylan Moore or a Day. They're the only two that you'd be considering, and I wouldn't do either. On to Sydney and North. Pretty tough matchup for both, so I'm not really looking at either, but just to quickly discuss, you got Golden and Heaney. Golden went 106 and Heaney went 71 last year. Remember, different role. We haven't seen any really high scores against North Melbourne at all for the last 5. We've only seen a Marcus Bontempelli went 128. So I'm not looking at anyone from Sydney this week. And vice versa, I'm not looking at anyone from North. So not looking at a Sheasel, or a McKercher. I don't think you're trusting either of those with the potential tag or the potential just hard matchup. So neither of them I'm looking at. On to Western Bulldogs and Carlton. Again, both pretty tough matchups, but I am possibly considering a Sam Walsh. He scored a 123 against them last year. And we saw the likes of Connor Rosie and Zach Butters go massive last week with a 147 and 136 last week. And before that, we had seen a Lockie Neal go 128 against them in the last 5. So they are starting to provide some decent points. I just think at Marvel, they're a bit of a different beast. So maybe one I'm not projecting to be the best scorer, but yeah, a bit tougher there. On the flip side, you got Marcus Bontempelli and A. Trelaw. Trelaw didn't play last year, so I don't have any records on him scoring against them, but Bontempelli went 118. Again, Carlton have been pretty tough, and there hasn't been too many ceiling scores. Surprisingly, Callum Ward is the only one that scored like over 110 in the last 5. He went 118. So yeah, I wouldn't be picking any of those two. But I do think Bont will be okay, just maybe not the highest ceiling score that we're sort of expecting. Moving on to the Crows and St Kilda, I do think Jordan Dawson will be pretty good here. Shouldn't have a tag coming up, so he should be pretty good. Again, there's probably not a huge amount of scores against St Kilda as in terms of inside mids. They've been pretty restrictive. We'll have a quick look here. Isaac Heaney went 105, Horn-Frost 112, McCluggage 132. There's not anything amazing to jump out here, so it's not the greatest sign. So he doesn't make my top 5 either, but could consider it as a bit of a bounce back game. On the flip side, again, who are you really trusting with the C? You're not probably looking at a Sinclair or a Steele at this point in time, so probably not looking at any of those. Moving on to Melbourne and Essendon. They'll start off with Zach Merritt and Caldwell. So Merritt went 119, while Caldwell went 63. Again, different role last year, but that's what we got to go off of. We have seen some decent scores against Melbourne recently, where Josh Dunkley went 158, and where Josh Dacos went 130. So not the best sort of results against them, but yeah, still some pretty high ceilings when they have been pretty poor. So just quickly look at that. I'll show you on the screen. Yeah, really discount any West Coast Eagles like players that just really can't score. But Josh Donkey 158 there. Harry Shees went 111. Josh Dacos went 130. Besides that, you had Hayden Young and Sarongo 106, 108. Steele went 122. So there are some pretty decent scores in there, but it really fluctuates. And I think Melbourne are slowly getting back to their being competitive, so maybe they're becoming a bit more restrictive in the last couple. So I don't mind going with them there, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't mind Merritt. Caldwell a bit more of a risky play, but he has been in real good form, so I highly recommend him there. But neither make my top 5, unfortunately. Moving on to the Sunday games, you've got Port Adelaide versus Suns. Starting off with the likes of Butters and Rosie. So Butters scored a 86 against the Suns last year, while Rosie scored a 103. We have seen some okay scores against the Suns recently. Harry Sheezer went 134, Nick Dacos went 115, and Andrew Brayshaw went 136. So both of them, if they can continue their form from last week, could go pretty big. It is at People's First Stadium though, where the Suns are a little bit more restrictive. I don't think many people have scored very well over there, so maybe it's a bit of a flag to maybe avoid them. Not really looking at a Anderson or anything like that on the other side, or Flanders. I don't think Port Adelaide's a pretty tough matchup, so I'm avoiding them there. The only one really worth talking about in this Richmond and Geelong Giants game is maybe Tom Green. He does make my top 5, surprisingly. He scored a 115 against them last year, and we're obviously targeting this matchup quite heavily. We've seen Andrew Brayshaw go 146 last week. Sam Walsh from 132, and Jordan Dawson went 124 in the last 5. So plenty of good scores there to go around, and I do expect him to get amongst that. And finally, we had a Josh Dunkley, who is my number 1 captain this week. Just given this matchup, his form, we've seen some plenty good scores. So he scored a 114 and 61 last year against West Coast Eagles. I think one of those was an injured game, unfortunately. We've seen the likes of Jai Caldwell go 126, Zach Merritt go 111, Dylan Moore go 127, and I'm struggling to think who's the last one. Yeah, there's plenty of good scores against the Eagles recently. They've really dropped off in terms of their competitiveness in the midfield, so yeah, it's a really good matchup to look at. One I did skip past as well in terms of Ruckman. I was looking at English against De Koning. He should be a pretty easy option as well. We're seeing likes of Toby Nankervis went 107, Sam De Koning went 100, and Kieran Briggs went 136. So all pretty good scores, and they're not all the best Ruckman either. So Tim English should wipe the floor with him there. I think that sort of does it. You're not looking at Grundy or a Cherry. That's a tough match up there. Just thinking about all the Ruckman that we're looking to trade in. Lloyd Meek could be an okay one, but I don't think you're trusting him with the captaincy. You could go with a Ron Marshall, but I don't think it's the best. He did score a 116 against Crows against the Crows last year. But in terms of the scores against the Crows recently, since O'Brien's been back there, no one's cracked a ton, so it's probably a bit of a flag. But in terms of my top 5, quickly, we'll go through that. Where is it? That one. So, number 1, I have Josh Dunkley. it's hard to go against him with that form of one back-to-back 140, 150s. I expect him to go well again this week. So he's my number one. I've gone Nick Dacos at number two. I think he should be pretty good, just given the matchup. Don't expect them to cop a huge amount of attention, just given it hasn't been huge, and they've usually got one of the midfielders roll around free like a Caldwell. So I think he is really up there. So he's my number two. I've thrown in English at number three there. I think he should be an easy 120, 130 for this week. So I really like him there against Tom de Koning. That probably would change if a Pitnet is in. So if Pitnet is named tonight, then I would be looking elsewhere. So that could change. If it does change, then I'd probably throw in a Caldwell at number five there, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Throwing number four at Tom Green, bit of a smoky one, I think. Just really targeting that matchup. They've really let one of the main midfielders just run around, do whatever they like. Bit of a flag though with the likes of maybe Graham does a bit of a tagging role on him, but I still would back him in there with some decent scores. And finally, I put Brayshaw there with his scoring history against the Hawks, 157, 134, and he's in some ripping form over the last month or so. So that is my top five. Like I said, if English is out, then if Pitnet is named inside, then I would take English out and put a Caldwell in there instead at number five. So that is my top five. Hopefully they go well this week. What am I doing this week? So before we get into some questions, what am I doing this week? So I'm probably going to go Nick Dacos as VC. And then I'm sort of tossing up between going, obviously English, if he is versing de Koning, I absolutely do that. If not, then I'd probably look at going either a Tom Green or I go a Sam Walsh, just really hoping the matchup isn't that bad there. I don't have a Dunkley or a Brayshaw at the moment, so yeah, I'm really just targeting the matchups there, my captains. So that's what I'm doing in terms of trades. It hasn't really changed a whole lot. I think I'm going to a Maxi Gorn to an Ankervis, if I can show that. A Nankervis. We'll just confirm that one for now. And then it's really just tossing up whether I want to be aggressive and go Heaney, and then I'd probably have to go to a Dylan Moore in that situation, which I do have enough money for. So that would probably be one of the trades. Or it will either be a Sexton, just given he may be out. If he's out, then absolutely he would be gone. But then I have to go down to a cheaper option in. I'm probably not looking at a forward, which is a bit of a shitty situation, honestly. I'd probably go to the likes of a McKercher and use DVP to move that around. And that leaves me with one rookie on field for the remainder of the season. I'll probably just throw him in now, just because I can. McKercher. And then we'll throw these guys around. Can I do that? Yeah, do that. And then confirm that trade, and that leaves me with 100k for next week to hopefully be able to, fingers crossed, we have no more bullets next week, and we'll be able to upgrade our final rookie off field and get that next player. So that's probably what I'm looking at. Like I said, my captains are okay. Let's quickly go through some questions. Let me just get that up here. Now we'll finish this off for today. Yeah, a bit of a longer one again, but obviously a lot of relevant topics we need to discuss. So I think a lot of you guys don't really mind the longer ones now, given that all the really hardcore players are now here. I think we've weeded out a lot of those casual players that were complaining that was so long. So I don't mind talking for a bit longer, as long as my voice holds up. All right, not many questions again this week, only 7. So first question comes from Kate. First trade is likely gone to Nank. Really love that. The second trade, what would you go then? Sexton to Moore leaves 200k for next week, leaving one forward rook on field. To upgrade next week. Yep. Or the second option is trading a Fraser to a Myers, Jackson, Kennedy. So I do think this probably is made up for you at teams where Sexton's maybe dropped, but I'd personally be moving on a Sexton before grabbing those Myers, Jackson, Kennedy. They're very risky players. If I had to pick between those three, I'd definitely go with Myers. I think he's shown a bit more consistency and a ceiling out of those three. Um, Kennedy, I can't trust, and Jackson with Sean Darcy coming back very shortly. I just couldn't do it. Even though it does remove all your rookies off field, I just think Sexton to a more is a bigger priority and more points upside. Question comes from Golden Glory. I'm trading out Gorn as my first trade to Meek. Love it. Very risky, but I do love the Meek play. But then I have around 400k left for my second trade. Do I trade Sexton to Moore, Richards to Moore, or go Richards to Simkin? Yeah, so okay, a lot of different options you got going on there. You do got to go on to explain that you could go Richards to a Simkin, and then that would allow you to go instead of a Meek to an English instead. So, um, I do. It's tough. It's very tough. I don't if I think back your gut in. If you think Meek's a really good option, I'd back that in and just trust your gut on that one. So that probably opens up the decision that you can make whether you're a rookie to a more or a Simkin, because Simkin at the end of the day is dropping coin, but there's no guarantee that Moore absolutely smashes it this week. So maybe you could play a looping game between a Sexton and a Moore for this week. So I think it's probably leading that way a little bit. At the end of the day, I think Sexton can push out a 70 if he plays this week, and Moore, who knows what he's going to do. I think he's got, who does he have? Hawks have Fremantle this week at UTAS as a general forward or winger, whatever you want to call him. They are a pretty tough matchup, I think, for both. Yeah, as a winger, he's a bit more flexibility. So I do think Moore will be okay. So I'd probably look to move Richards up to a Moore there and just loop between a Sexton and a Moore. But if Sexton's out, then obviously Sexton goes. You then followed up this question with from Glory, Golden Glory again, but you followed up with one more question. Do I VC a Dacos into Merit, or am I better off VCing Golden than Captain into Merit? If you're looking for a ceiling, I think you probably can go Golden into a Merit. I think Golden has shown a bigger ceiling than what a Dacos has. But again, Golden doesn't have the best matchup against North. I think they're pretty restrictive. So I'd probably personally go Dacos into a Merit. I think that's pretty safe. Merit's pretty safe, like 100, 110 guy. So that's pretty good there. So that's where I'd be going. Dacos into Merit. Next question comes from Pi Trabone. Okay, I don't know how to spell that. Sorry, Pi. I'll call you Pi. TDK plus Whitfield, Nank plus Merit, or English into Law. Really weird way to say which one would you prefer, but I am personally going to go with Nank and Merit in that situation. I think Nank is a really good option for the remainder of the season. I think a lot of unique, and then Merit's a pretty safe 100 to 110 guy. Should be a pretty good option, captain option for the remainder of the year as well. So that's the way I'm leading. If you want to follow the pack a little bit more, then probably go English into Law. I don't really rate the whole DeConing and Whitfield situation. I do like Whitfield, just maybe DDK is a bit risky for the likes of Pitnet being inside, but we'll wait and see on that one. Power Prawn Stars have Houston, Wilmot, and Will Power there in the backline, but still had a great week. Rest of the team looks good. I'm thinking of trading Wilmot to Lockie Evans and Houston to Whitfield. Could even loop Evans and Shawmaker. Yeah, I think that's great options. I think you need to move on one of those guys. So obviously a Houston and a Wilmot probably definitely need to go. I think Power's probably fine for a little while longer. He does have that role, so that should be fine. And then yeah, absolute loop between an Evans and a Shawmaker. I'd probably prefer to field Evans, so maybe set the bar pretty low for an Evans there. I think he plays first. I actually don't know. No, so Shawmaker plays first, and then Evans after that. So set the bar pretty high. I'd say maybe a 60 or 70 there. I think Evans could pretty much do that pretty easily. So there's that one. And then the final question for today: thoughts on Gaunt to DeConing? English and day to dunks, but keep a rookie or go on to make and reveal to Dylan Moore. So again, just weighing up what's the bigger priority here. Either getting that last rookie off field or you upgrading your these failing mid prices as such. So I personally like a Gorn to English is probably the better option there out of those two. And then I think you go day to dunks. I think day at the end of the day, that was unintentional, is scoring like a rookie. He's scoring 70s, which we have on the field. Um, whereas I think you can replace a reveal on the field or loop between a good couple of rookies there. So I'd probably be going day to dunks instead of a reveal to Dylan Moore. So hopefully that helps. Sorry, that was a yeah. All right, that will sort of do it. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. Hopefully I've answered plenty of questions, and hopefully it's given you plenty of advice on what you should be doing this week in this Carnage round. But hopefully it's teams that come out pretty shortly and nothing goes wrong. I'd say it'd be pretty okay. I haven't heard any whispers about anything, so I think all will go well. But yeah, please subscribe, leave a like on the video. Yeah, and I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.